What's up, everybody? This is episode 17 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint, and I'm here with the one and only John Sarandrea, former head coach at Tolentine High School in the Bronx, and former assistant coach at the University of Pittsburgh, coach of New Castle for 15 years, and now he's a superintendent at the New Castle schools in Pennsylvania. Coach, thank you for having us. Thank you for coming on to talk to me.
It's a pleasure to be here, David. My pleasure. And
Indeed.
not only is it a pleasure, but it's nice to hear a New York voice and a New York accent every once in a while, too.
Indeed. So, Coach, my first question is, during your time when you were coaching, what was your coaching philosophy?
Well, I worked five-star basketball camp for many years. And one of the coaches that I was exposed to when I was at five-star was Rick Pitino. So as far as philosophically talking about the game of basketball, I wanted us to play hard for 32 minutes. I felt like we had to keep pressure on the other team for the entire time that the clock ticked. And that would mean that practices had to be really, really intense and really, really difficult. I've always believed that practice has to be 10 times harder than the actual game. So we wanted to push the ball. We wanted to press on defense. We wanted to really make sure that we left it all on the floor during practice and during the game. So I guess you could say my philosophy summed up in a cliche would be hard work pays off.
Cool. So when did basketball first become a part of your life?
So in 1980, I graduated from Iona College in New Rochelle, New York, ironically where Rick Pitino is going now. And I used a lot of his philosophy over the years. But at the time, Jim Valvano was the head coach of Iona, taking you way back. This is before he went to NC State. This is before he recruited Ernie Myers, who played at Tolentine, was a great player at Tolentine, won a national championship there his first year. And I was fortunate, and he allowed me to be his graduate assistant. So I really, in 1980, just under the 1 year that I worked under Jim Valvano at Iona. Before that, I had played, but never really thought about coaching until I had that experience.
Awesome.
So he left right after that. He went to NC State, and right after that, I got the JV coaching job at Tolentine High School at the ripe old age of 21.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So let's go back to the beginning, the very beginning. So you're originally from Brooklyn.
Correct. I was born in Brooklyn.
What part of Brooklyn?
I was born in Flatbush.
Okay.
When I was 3 years old, my parents moved to Rosedale, which is in Queens, New York. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
I'm very familiar with Rosedale, close to Long Island.
Right. It's right on the Queens-Nassau border.
Mm-hmm.
So it's as far east as you can go and still be in the city, in Queens. So grew up there, went to Christ the King High School in Middle Village, Queens. Played for a guy named Don Kent, who coached there for many, many years. He also coached at Amata Christi High School, which later on became St. John's Prep, if you remember.
Okay.
Amata Christi, they had Bernard Rencher, and they had great players over the years. Then it became St. John's Prep. And so I went to Christ the King. After I went to Christ the King, I went to Iona. I played baseball there. And then, like I said, in 1980, getting ready to graduate, I ended up getting a master's degree for free because Jim Valvano allowed me to be the graduate assistant for both baseball and basketball.
Now talk about, your tutelage under Jimmy V. Like what kind of a person was he for the young kids that may or may not know him?
Yes. So today we know him, of course, because of the money that the V Foundation has raised for cancer. Dick Vitale and just about every coach is familiar with it. That's the day that they all coach wearing a pair of tennis shoes, if you know that.
Mm-hmm.
And that raises money for the V Foundation. But anyway, the guy was an amazing guy. Keep in mind, he was only in his 30s at the time when he was the head coach at Iona. Just the first guy up in the morning, the last guy to leave in the afternoon, an amazing speaker and an amazing motivator, Dave. One of my favorite Jim Valvano stories is this. And the theme of the story is that fame is fleeting, okay? You can't keep it. You can't hold on to it. And it only lasts like a flash in the pan. But he said the football coach had just finished 10-0, and when he walked into the banquet hall, he was greeted with a standing ovation. And as he approached the microphone, he had to quell the crowd. He began to speak, and he said, I want to thank you all for the tremendous support you've given this team this year. But there's one thing I need to know. If next year we should happen to finish 5-5, will you still love me? And the most important Booster Club member in the room stood up and said, of course we'll still love you, and we'll miss you too. So what does that tell you? You're 10-0 this year. Next year you finish 5-5, you're fired.
It's very unfortunate. And I'm thinking about an old song that the Notorious B.I.G. In the song he says, there's no guarantee they'll love you next year. And unfortunately in the college game, that is very, very true.
Sure is.
So
Sure is.
talk about, that 1979-80 team. The year, you guys made it to the NCAA tournament. You guys
Sure.
had some really good talent.
Yes.
And you beat Louisville at the Garden when they were nationally ranked.
How do you remember that, don't you? Wow.
I'm
sure
27, so I know about that game.
Listen, that was the last game. I think the last game Louisville lost that year. They ran it off and they won the national championship right after that. But we had a guy by the name of Jeff Ruland on our team. Jeff was probably Jim Valvano's greatest recruiting coup. Here's a kid came from Suffolk County in Long Island, 6'11", being recruited by everybody in the country, including Kentucky and all the big wigs at the time. And Jim Valvano got him to go to Iona. Amazing. We also had two really good backcourt players, a kid by the name of Kevin Hamilton and another kid by the name of Glenn Vickers. And they were really, really good players. So those three freshman and sophomore years were really made up the nucleus of the team. We beat Holy Cross in the first round of the NCAA tournament and ended up losing to Penn in the second round, and Penn went to the Final Four. So I forget who the guard was, not Austin Carr, but they had a tremendous guard, Penn did. Played in the NBA for years, and Penn had a great team. I think maybe they were the last Ivy League team.
Was it Tony Price?
Tony Price, that's it. You got it. The last team from the Ivy League ever to make a run like that. Even the great Pete Carrill teams at Princeton didn't run as far as that Penn team did. They were really, really good. Felt like we should have beat them, but it took a little bit of the sting away after they ended up making it all the way to the Final Four in the country. And then, of course, like I said, Jim Valvano left. That next year he went to NC State and recruited Ernie Myers from Tolentine. I was the assistant coach at the time. Bob Austin was the head coach. I stay in touch with Ernie on Facebook to this day. And then what was wonderful was in Ernie's first year, after an illustrious high school career of winning 3 straight Catholic high school championships and winning 1 state champion. And then we lost 2 years in a row at the buzzer. I'll never forget that when we were at Tolentine. He goes to NC State as a freshman, wins the national title. I mean, how about that run for the Bronx? That's amazing, Just Well, actually, I think Ernie was from Manhattan, but Tolentine was in the Bronx.
Yeah, he's from the east side of Harlem.
Yes. Right. Right.
So at 21, this is 1980, correct?
That's correct.
You went on to Tolentine after being in the NCAA tournament with Iona. You know, talk about, you know, that first year under Bob Austin and the players that you guys had.
I had a really rough year with my team, believe it or not. We only won one game. That's the truth.
This is the JV team.
JV team. And here's why. Bob had taken all of these terrific sophomores up to the varsity. So I was left with a very, very young team. And, you know, we didn't have a great year. Like I said, all the really good stuff. Ernie was a sophomore. Darrell Johnson was a sophomore. Kevin House was a sophomore. He took them all. And they were all really, really good players. And as sophomores, they won they won everything. They won the city championship. We lost to Malvern at the buzzer in Glens Falls that year. So really, it was a great year, an exciting year. Right after coming out of Iona, we make this tremendous run in Tolentine. Now, remember this, Dave. You got to remember, in the 80s, this was the heyday of Catholic high school basketball, and maybe even New York City basketball. I don't know that it's been that good since. You're talking just tremendous talent, tremendous players. Chris Mullen, Conrad McCrae, Malik Sealy, like I said, Ernie Myers, Kenny Anderson, Robert Wardan, Jamal Mashburn. Listen to all these names, Then right across the border in New Jersey, Bobby Hurley, Terry Dare, Luther Wright, Darrell Walker, Jerry Walker. They had just, it was the heyday in the metropolitan area. Just exposed to some amazing teams. So, needless to say, after those guys won it in the 10th graders, they won it again as 11th graders, and they won it again as seniors. And that one year we ended up losing to Our Savior Lutheran at the buzzer as well. They had two really good players. I think they had two kids that went to St. John's, Reggie Carter. And do you remember a guy, no, what? He didn't go to St. John's. He went back to Italy to be a pro. Augusto Benelli.
Yes.
Remember that name? Huh?
Yeah, I know about that name.
Yep. And then I think the year before that, they had a kid by the name of Marco Baldi. Remember him? And he ended up going to St. John's too. So we end up going to Glens Falls and end up playing teams that are 15 miles apart from us, because the best basketball was right here in the city, Did I lose you there for a minute?
No, I can still hear you.
Okay, good. I just lost. Oh, there you are. There we are again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, I don't know too many 21-year-olds that were exposed to what I was, and while I was cutting my teeth as a coach, I was very, very fortunate. Very fortunate.
So, all right. After 3 straight championship wins, actually, you know what? Tell me some of the players that were there at that time outside of Ernie Myers.
Okay, so you had Kevin House, who was a 6'5" center, tremendous athlete, great kid, really mature for his age. Darrell Johnson, do you remember Darrell? Darrell went to New Hampshire, Division II, was a great player, great high school player, but and he even had a great college career as well. I thought he could have played at a higher level. We had a kid by the name of Jimmy Carson. I don't know if you remember Jimmy. He was a 2-guard, really good shooter, good ball handler. And Damon Glover. I don't know if you remember Damon at all. Was a good player. The year before that I got there, the point guard at Tolentine was Mike Moses, the St. John's Mike Moses, if you remember him. He was a terrific player as well. let's see who else we had on those teams that were really good. That nucleus really made up the heart and soul of the team for the 3 years, because they all started together from the time they were sophomores. So point guard one year was Jim Carson. Point guard was, like I said, Mike Moses, who was terrific, and then Damon Glover, who didn't start until he was a senior and did a tremendous job again at the point. And then, you know what? After those guys left, Bob stayed one more year. He had John Johnson, who ended up playing at Virginia. Do you remember Johnny Johnson?
Heard of him, yeah.
What was
okay.
And
Did he go to Iona College or Virginia?
He went to Virginia.
Okay.
He was played all 4 years at Virginia. And then there was Gary Voce, who went to Notre Dame. Big Gary lived in the same area in Queens that Kenny Anderson lived. I believe they live in, I forget the name of not Lafrac City.
Yeah, it was Lafrac City.
Was it?
Yes.
Okay, so it was Lafrac City. Yeah, they lived in the same building, I think. Even imagine that. Imagine that. Gary and Kenny Anderson in the same building.
So he had to commute all the way from.
He went from Queens, New York,
to Fordham Road.
To Tolentine. Yes, he did.
Wow.
Don Johnson went all the way from Brooklyn to Tolentine today too.
Wow.
Yeah. So 85, I think we lost in the semifinals, and then Bob ended up retiring. That was 84, and Bob ended up retiring, and then I got the job in 85, and I was at Tolentine for 4 years, 85, 86, 87, and 88. So in 86, if I could go back then, we had a terrific team, nationally ranked team, and we lost in overtime in the city championship game to Molloy. And I think that year Molloy ended up losing to Our Savior Lutheran in the state championship game, believe it or not. And
wait, wasn't it Binghamton instead?
King Rice? Was it King Rice in 86?
Yeah, because I know they won the whole thing. Or no, wait. Actually, it was Lincoln.
Okay. Lincoln, 86, 87. I think it was Our Savior Lutheran. And then 88 we won, and we beat Our Savior Lutheran in the championship that year.
Okay.
But 86 we had a really good team. I wouldn't say it was as good as the Sealy, Autry, and Reese team, but it was a really good team. I'll give you some names you may or may not remember. Gregory Rock played for Manhattan College. God rest his soul. He passed away at a very young age. We had Claude Ferdinand. Claude ended up going to James Madison, had a nice career there. We had Joe Moore, who ended up having a nice Division II career, and a 5'6" point guard from Harlem by the name of Keith Dennis. Terrific little player. Terrific player. You know what I mean? He was only 5'6", but he had the heart of a lion. Just an amazing kid. Tough as nails. So anyway, that was the first year that we actually played a national schedule and traveled, many times out of state. We won the Seagull Classic that year in Atlantic City, New Jersey. That was actually the first national tournament Tolentine had ever won. Normally we stayed local over Christmas and at the beginning of the year. So 86, we took the program national. And 88, due to a great leader and a great basketball player by the name of Malik Sealy, not only did we win the city championship and the state championship, we finished number 1 in the USA Today, which was, quite an accomplishment. And of course, if you were the best team in New York City in the 80s, you were the best team in the country as well.
That's awesome. So let's go back to, 84. You're probably about 25 at this time, and you become the head coach. talk
Yes.
about, how did you feel just being given the job? Were there any nerves, or was there more like excitement? Like, okay, this is my program now. Like, how are we gonna make this pop?
You know what, Dave? To be completely transparent and to be completely honest, I wasn't ready yet. I was not ready. And I had to take a crash course because I was coaching against the likes of Tom Murray and John Carey and Jack Kern and all of these guys that had 30 years under their belt coaching, and they beat my butt. So I know I learned from the best guys around, and I learned really quick that if you're not ready, it doesn't matter how good of players you have, you're going to get out coached and you're going to lose. So in 1985, I really got a crash course in coaching, and I really, really immersed myself in video and in camps and at clinics. I mean, I never sat still that whole year because I really felt like I let my team down that year because I wasn't ready. And I wasn't. In 86, obviously still had a lot to learn, but I covered a tremendous amount of ground by working at 5-Star and listening to lectures and being around guys like John Calipari and Rick Pitino and Pete Gillen, and the list goes on and on and on about the 5-Star guys that I had been exposed to, Mike Fratello, Uni Brown, So in 86, I felt like I was ready. We made a great run. We won the league. We won the Archdiocese of New York. And like I said, we went to the city championship game and lost in overtime to Kenny Anderson and Archbishop Molloy. And just a great, great game. Now, back in the day, if you lost in the city championship, even though you might have been one of the top 2-3 teams in the whole state, you were out. Your season was over. So when we lost to Archbishop Molloy in 1986, it really stung. We had a great team. We're on a great run. But once we lost that game, we had to put the balls away,
I know that was difficult.
Yeah, very, very.
So let's fast forward to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Coach. I'm sorry.
So no, I was going to say, then 87 comes along, and St. Raymond's now was the really good team, and a really good team in the Bronx that year as well. Darrell Reed was a really good player for them. And we ended up winning the league, but they ended up beating us in the Archdiocesan championship game. So instead of us playing Molloy once again in the championship game, we ended up having to play Molloy in the semifinals at St. John's. And they beat us again. And it came to an end for us there. I think we won 26 or 27 games that year, but ended up coming up short. So, Molloy went on to represent the city in the state finals. And then, now think about this. The next year comes along. We start the season ranked number 5 in the country, 1988. And Archbishop Molloy starts the season ranked number 1 in the country, USA Today. And the first game of the season was Tolentine and Molloy. And we agreed to play the game at Molloy. And this was over Thanksgiving weekend. So it was the Friday night after Thanksgiving. Dave, the tickets sold out in half an hour. Half an hour. Now, Molloy has a small gym.
Yeah, it does.
Only seated maybe 1,000, maybe. If you let people stand, it'd be over 1,000, which they did. But anyway, we played them the very first game of the season, and we beat them at Molloy, which was great. So then we moved to number 1, and they moved to 3, and St. Anthony's was 2. So now you have 3 schools within 15 miles of each other. Number 1, number 2, and number 3 in the country. How about that? Unbelievable. That was
amazing.
Us, St. Anthony's, and Archbishop Molloy. So, that was a storybook year. We ended up playing Molloy in the state championship game, and we beat them again, and exercised that demon for the second time in that year, and then we cruised from there, Dave. We played Holy Trinity in for the Catholic Championship. We beat them pretty handily. Then we went up to Glens Falls and we played Adelaide Stevenson from the Bronx in the first round. They had David Kane, if you remember, little David, who was a good guard. Billy Singleton had graduated the year before. They were really good that year. But anyway, we really gave them a beating. We beat them by about 30. And then the next night we played again against Our Savior Lutheran. And they had Danny Torado, another good little guard, if you remember him. And we put about a 30-point licking on them as well. We end up finishing, one in the city, one in the state, and one in the USA Today. And, of course, Malik Sealy was named the Mr. Basketball in New York. And I was named, luckily, the National High School Coach of the Year.
Wow.
So I learned a lot in 4 years, I got to tell you.
Now, let's talk about
8 players. Say it again, Dave.
Yeah, let's talk about coaching against Jack Kern, a big legend. Like, how was it, coaching against him?
Yeah. So, of course, Jack was a legend. Probably still is the winningest coach in New York City history in both basketball and baseball. Coached for 50 some odd years. Just amazing. You're right. A legend. Intimidating. I'm trying to look at a parallel. It would be like a 21-year-old coaching against, I don't know, Rick Pitino, or, one of these guys that's, up in the top 5 in the country. So make a long story short, I watched a lot of film of Molloy. I think I knew more about Molloy than anybody else in New York knew, just from watching video of them. Maybe the players knew a little bit more than me and Jack did, but nobody else, I can tell you that. I watched them. I watched their triangle offense. I watched the things that they did. And they didn't do a lot of things, but what they did extremely well. They really did. And so I learned some things from watching film of them. And I also incorporated some of the things, some of the sets that Molloy ran that I really liked. And, put it into our repertoire. It really helped Malik, slip out and get a lot of easy baskets because he was so quick off his feet, But, I learned a lot. Like I said, going against Jack Kern, very intimidating. I mean, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing here? What am I doing here coaching against this guy? He's got 30 years experience already. This is my first year. But, you learn. It was baptism by fire for me. Thankfully, I had a lot of really good players that covered my multitude of mistakes as a young coach.
Now, during your 8 years at Tolentine, you guys had a lot of guys from Riverside Church.
Yes.
How was it, getting all these players from that one program? And did you ever get any guys from Gauchos?
So it's really a good question. And it's really a good story too. But anyway, yes, most of my players were from Riverside Church and some other programs from time to time, but never a Gaucho. That was like, oil and vinegar. That wasn't going to happen. You were either a Gaucho school or a Riverside Church school. And we were a Riverside Church school. So, all your great players from, like I said, Malik Sealy, Adrian Autry, Brian Reese, and Ernie Myers, and Darrell, Kevin, and all those guys. Those guys were all Riverside Church, Ernie Lorch guys. You know what I mean? And, I developed a good relationship with Ernie over the years because I was assistant coach. And, I was with Bob all the time when Ernie was around, and I'd go to a lot of Riverside Church games. In fact, 1988, I went to a Riverside game, and that's when I first laid eyes on Malik Sealy. Just was watching a bunch of my other guys play, and in walks this string bean, 14 years old. And he had to be about, at the time, he probably was about 6'4",
And this was in '84.
Yes, he weighed about $110,
Wow.
But boy, was he quick off his feet, and just really cerebral, really picked up things very quickly, knew his role, great on the offensive glass. Other guys were getting ready to jump, and he was already up there and, tapping it in. And I said to myself, oh, this guy, I haven't seen this kid before. I wonder if he's new in town or whatever. But he was only in between his 8th and 9th grade year. So I said to, Ernie, I said, geez, Ernie, who the heck is this kid, Malik Sealy? I might have even called him Malik, because that wasn't a popular name at the time. There are many Maliks now, but at the time, that wasn't a very popular name. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So certainly, I said to Ernie, he said, yeah, he lives by Murray Bertram. That's where Malik would have went if he would have went to public school.
Oh, so he was a Lower East Side kid, basically.
Yes. So sure enough, he said, well, what do you think? Would you like to have him? Would would you like to have him as a player? I said, I'd love him to come to Tolentine. So, the parents visited the school, and they liked the nuns that ran the school, and he enrolled as a freshman, and the rest, as they say, is history. Started for me as a freshman. And, he was just an awesome, not only an awesome player, as good a player as he was a 10 times better human being. So, he really, as good as those other guys were that came before him, and they were great, like Ernie in particular, Malik was at that level, or maybe even a little higher, because he was not, Ernie was about 6'4", Malik was 6'8", so it was a big difference. And Malik just kept getting better and stronger and smarter, and became a great leader. Here's an interesting story for you, Dave. When he was a senior, I would go over the scouting report, and the matchups early, and then I'd leave, and he'd give the team the pep talk. He did. Senior in high school. Can you imagine that? And people would always say, well, what does he say in there? And I'd say, I don't know, but it sure is working, so I'm not going to mess with it.
Wow.
So, everybody really looked up to him. Keep in mind, on that team in 1988, there were two really young, budding, terrific McDonald All-Americans too, and Adrian Autry and Brian Reese. Brian, of course, as you know, went to North Carolina, and just like Ernie Myers, in his first year there, won a national championship. And then Red went to one of our rivals in Syracuse. That broke my heart, but that's where he went.
So, talk about having, those two as. Did they play Did they play varsity their freshman year?
Brian Reese did. Brian Reese played varsity in his freshman year, and I brought Adrian Autry up as a freshman for the playoffs. So you might say yes, they did.
So talk about
Brian
having
started, Brian started from the time he was a freshman.
Okay. Like, how were they at that age? Like, were they more physically advanced than most freshmen?
I would say the answer to that is yes, but not anywhere near where they were going to be in time. But, Brian was, you could throw Brian an alley-oop at 14. You know what I mean? I mean, here's a 14-year-old ninth grader that everybody's focusing on Malik, and he'd slip in behind the defense, and you'd throw something up at the basket, and then here all of a sudden, here comes this rocket ship, grabbing it and hammering it down at 14 years old. Unbelievable. And he developed a nice little feathery jumper as time went on. But I think what was good for these guys is they didn't have to be leaders right out of the gate. They had really good players around them. And then when it was their time to lead, they were ready. You know, I mean, they had 2 good years under Malik. And then when Malik left, they were ready. Malik had 2 good years under guys like Claude Ferdinand and Gregory Rock. And when those guys graduated, he was ready. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what makes a great program is you have good leadership and good commitment and people that the other players really aspire to be like and look up to. And when you have guys like that and everybody else is talented as well, that could be the difference between winning and losing right there, having guys like that.
Mm-hmm. So you guys had basically 4 McDonald's All-Americans on that team. Malik Sealy, Brian Reese, Adrian Autry, and Anthony Cade.
Yeah, okay. So Anthony, we only had for a year. And then Anthony had a hard time in school. He had a hard time getting to school, and then he had a hard time in school. And maybe we weren't a great fit for him. I'm certainly not going to blame it on him. But Anthony Cade was just, at 6'10", was a phenomenal player, but had difficulty getting becoming eligible, and did go on and did go on to become a really good player, but his success wasn't at Tolentine, I will say. Don't forget a really good player by the name of Lee Green.
Was he a part of that team too?
Yes, he was. He certainly was.
Mm.
Lee ended up going to St. John's as well. And, I don't know if you're aware of this, David, that Lee just passed away.
Yeah, I heard about that. Rest in peace,
Yeah.
Lee Green.
Yes. Yep. A great kid and just a great athlete. Ended up going to St. John's, But, when you're in a program like we had with the players that we had, sometimes you have to wait your turn to play until you were a senior. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you get some time. We had a really good team, and if we were winning, if we were winning games, then there would be time to rest your starters and get the other guys some run. But that wasn't always the case because we played a really tough schedule. But if you paid your dues, by the time you became a senior, you were ready to play, ready to control. I'll give you another name that was a really good player for us. Ended up being a Division II terrific player, a kid by the name of Keith Odoms. You remember Keith Odoms?
I've heard the name.
Yes. He was terrific for us off the bench. Jerome Holmes. Do you know Jerome Holmes?
Xavier University.
At the Xavier, right? There's another one of my former guys that has passed away at a young age, too. My God, just heartbreaking. So, but again, Jerome was a guy that came to us when he was a sophomore. He wanted to go to Catholic school, and he came and played a lot as a sophomore, and then ended up starting for us his junior and his senior. Benny Gordon.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember Benny Gordon? Benny was from Harlem as well.
No, I've never heard his name.
He was terrific. He ended up going to James Madison with Claude Ferdinand. Mid-major Division I player, terrific player, terrific. He played in the backcourt with John Johnson when the year after Bob retired. He was a senior. I coached him on the JV. So when I was the JV coach, remember I told you we won 1 game in my first year, and the next year we won the city championship. And then, so I ended up winning the city championship in 82, 84. We lost in 86 in the final, and then we won in 88. 82 and the 84 teams was with the JV. So when we went to a city championship game, 7 out of the 8 years that I was at Tolentine. Just amazing.
Amazing. Wasn't there a kid named with the last name Evans on the '88 team?
Evans.
Yeah, I know that his brother was his brother's name was, they called him Ali Mo. He was a street ball legend.
Okay. Oh yeah, yeah. Yes. I can't remember. Do you remember his first name?
I forgot, but I know they called him Stick Ice.
Okay.
So anyway, so how many
Ellis it might have been. How about Rimmel Mccluster? Do you remember Rimmel?
No.
Okay, he was another really good guard we had over the years.
So
Michael Middleton, Huey Lawrence, terrific. On a team with so many stars, it was just so hard to
give them all playing time.
Yes. It's very, very hard. Some of these guys would have been stars on any other team. You know what I mean? But they stayed with their team. I always played 8 or 9 guys a game. As the games got more important and the playoffs, games started to kick in, I shortened the bench a little bit and maybe went down to about 7. But during the season, I rotated guys in and out, and we wanted them to play as hard as they could for as long as they could. And, we played at a breakneck pace. So you get tired, put your hand up, we'll get you a break, we'll get you back in there, So I was able to play 8 or 9 guys during the season. And maybe that's why they stuck around, because they did get to play on a good team, and practices were intensely competitive. Just unbelievable. Sometimes the practices were more competitive than the games. If you can believe it,
So at that time, on that '88 team, was Bobby Gonzalez with you?
Bobby Gonzalez was with me as the JV coach in '88, and Bob Mackey was my varsity assistant. So yeah, Bobby Gonzalez was with us that year. How
was Mackey and Gonzalez at that time? Were they young? Were they young, hungry coaches like you?
Yes, they were. They were terrific. They were terrific around the kids. The kids loved them. It was like a good cop, bad cop thing. I'd be the bad cop, and then those guys would pull the players aside and say, "Listen, do you understand what he was telling you?" And focus on the message, not on the volume of what he's saying. And you have to have that. No, they were great. They were absolutely, positively great. Very, very lucky to be around those guys at the time. They did a lot of the things behind the scenes that nobody sees. That Let me give you an example, Dave, of what we did back in the day. Every day, we washed the team's practice jerseys, and every day and after every game, we washed the uniforms. So we made sure that the student athletes always had clean practice gear and never had to leave it in their locker. We took it home, we rotated. The uniforms were always clean. Nobody ever bleached one and ruined it or anything like that. You know what I mean? Want to do everything first class. So, think about just bringing the laundry home from these guys every night, taking turns and doing things like that, so that, the little things were always in place. We always had team dinners on Thursday nights. We tried to do things other than basketball, go bowling, go to a movie, do things like that. Those are the types of things, especially having a meal together, what really makes the bonding, really, really strong. I would recommend that to any young coach today, is to make sure that the team does things together outside of basketball.
Absolutely.
Really important. Really important.
So how was Tolentine, the high school, as a school back in the day at that time?
Yeah. So, Dave, I taught there too. When I graduated from college, I was a teacher. I was also a New York City firefighter. I don't know if you know that or not.
Wow.
The firehouse was right up the street from Tolentine, on Burnside and 179th Street, right off the 179th Street exit of the Deegan. You're probably familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right there. And then right up the street, I shoot right up Andrews Avenue, and the next thing you know, I'd be at Tolentine about a mile away after I left there. So I taught at Tolentine High School. I taught English and social studies. So I got to be with the kids most of the day. I was only a part-time teacher. I taught 3 classes a day. So I'd leave the firehouse and then take a shower and throw my suit on and go teach my classes and then go to practice and go right back to the firehouse at night.
When there weren't no games.
Yes, when there were no games, right. So I had to make sure, I needed to have every Friday night off and every Tuesday off because, we played Friday nights and Tuesday afternoons back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
The games on Tuesday were right after school, 3:45.
Right.
So they started a little bit early, got done a little earlier because it was through the week. But Tolentine was a good school, small school, very, very family-like. The school was a third white, a third African-American, and a third Hispanic. So you want to talk about diversity and just a nice mix of kids. It was just a really good place, a really, really good New York City high school to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Real melting pot of kids from all over the city. Keep in mind that, we were so close to Manhattan because we were all the way on the west side of the Bronx there.
Mm-hmm.
That there are as many kids that came to school there from Manhattan as there were from the Bronx.
Right.
Because just right across the bridge they came.
You got Dykeman over here.
Yep.
And then you have all of Fordham Road.
Yep.
On the other side.
Absolutely. So, again, like I said, we had lots of kids come from, a lot of our Hispanic kids came from Inwood and what's just north of Inwood? Washington Heights.
Mm.
They come from there. They come from as far south as Harlem, although a lot of the Harlem kids went to Rice.
Right.
But only if you were a boy because Rice was all boys.
Right.
And Tolentine was co-ed, So we got kids from all over the city. It was just a great place. It really was. All the kids came to the games. All the teachers and the teachers and the nuns and the clergy that worked at the school, they came to all the games. It was awesome. It really was.
So take me through to that '88 championship game at Fordham against Molloy. Like, this is probably like the third time in as many years that you're playing the playoffs, and it's sold out, and you guys are playing on Sports Channel America. Like,
yes,
take me through that game.
So that game was commentated by Walt Frazier. I don't know if you remember that, but
wow,
Walt was the color commentator for the game on the sports channel at the time. I don't think that exists anymore.
No.
But so anyway, we knew that we had beaten them earlier in the year at Molloy, first game of the season. We remember what the sting was like in '86 and '87, and I think we were really prepared and really ready this time to make sure that it was our turn to win. And tell you what, the game went right down to the wire. There was a tremendous steal by Adrian Autry, and he outletted a pass to Brian Reese on the break, and Brian saw Malik trailing. So he took one hard dribble toward the basket and then threw it behind him, and Malik caught it, and he almost ripped the rim down. And, of course, the place went nuts, and all of the momentum swang our way at that point in time. I think we got a steal on the inbounds and a quick score. They called the timeout, and that was it. We put that little run together just at the right time at the end. Corey Allen, who was one of our unsung hero point guard, very close friend of Malik Sealy, one of the pallbearers at Malik's funeral. Corey made 2 huge free throws, and I remember watching it on television, and I remember Jack Kern calling a timeout because it was a 1-and-1, and Jack called the timeout to try to freeze Corey, and then Corey went to the line, and Kenny Anderson gave him a little swat in the behind because all the kids knew each other from playing at Riverside, Give him a little swat in the behind as if to say, "Hey, don't choke, Corey." And Corey buried both of them, and that was the end of the game there.
Wow.
We ended up winning. We were beyond excited, just beyond excited because we had lost. They had ended our season 2 years in a row, and then finally gave them a taste of what it's like to have to go home with a great team, which they had. They were taking nothing away from them. They were a great team. They had another kid on their team by the name of Ralph James, who was a really good player, and he ended up going to Harvard. So they had 3 Division I starters as well with Wardan, Anderson, and Ralph James. They're really good. They're really good. So it was a quality win. And after we won that game, we knew there wasn't anybody left that was going to be able to challenge us. We knew it. And then we had 3 games left, and we won all 3 games by an average of 25 points.
Amazing.
Yeah, we just cruised from that point on. So here's a great story for you. On the last night of the season, we were ranked number 1. We were ranked number 2 in the country. Crenshaw from California was ranked number 1. And they were playing in the state championship game on the same night as we were in California. So our game was over first because they're 3 hours behind us. So we won. And then we found out a little bit later on that they were playing a team called Manual Arts High School. And that school, this was the 3rd time they were playing them, and they'd already beaten them twice. And didn't Manual Arts knock them off? And that made us the number 1 on the last game of the season. On the last night, we went from 2 to 1. And not a lot of people know that story, but we had God was with us for sure. That was really meant to be. No doubt about that.
So what will you remember most about the '88 team?
Just the way that they handled all of the pressure, the way that they handled the media, the way that they handled, multitude of college coaches at every game. I think the kids handled the pressure. I think I felt more pressure than them. As a coach, I always wanted to try to take as much pressure off my players as I could. I wanted the pressure on me, and you guys, you just go out and play and have fun, But sometimes, Dave, you have to remember when you're the favorite to win every game you play, sometimes it takes a little bit of the fun out of it. Do you know what I mean? It takes a little bit of the fun. Sometimes, every once in a while, it's nice to be the underdog that peaks right at the right time and sneaks up on people and stings them. But when you are the prohibitive favorite every game you play, that's a lot of pressure. Everybody's gunning for you. You got a big target on your back. And these guys really handled that the length of the season. We finished 30-1 that year. Our only loss came to St. Anthony's.
Wow.
Yes.
So 3 years later, while you're at Pitt, unfortunately the school closes. Like,
Yes.
how heartbreaking was that for you?
It was very heartbreaking. There were always rumors, even during the 8 years that I was there, that the parish was having a hard time financing the school. The parish was, the community didn't have a lot of money anymore. At one time, it was a pretty wealthy area, and even the bishop was stationed at the big Tolentine Cathedral, St. Nicholas Tolentine Cathedral. But the neighborhood changed, and it became a working class neighborhood, and it was very hard to support the church and the school. And don't forget, there was a Tolentine elementary school as well. So it was supporting an elementary school and a high school.
And the church on top of that.
Yes. So it was a lot. And the money wasn't coming into the collection. Thank God, we had the kids paying the tuition. But, everything goes up in price, and you can't keep raising the tuition. These parents of these kids were scraping every penny that they had together to send their kids to to a religious school. You just didn't have the heart to ask them for any more money. It was already, at the time, $1,000. Now it's like $6,000 or $7,000 to go to Catholic school or more.
Yeah,
But at the time,
yeah,
it
my
was
brother.
$1,000.
Oh,
Huh?
sorry, $1,000 to go to.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. Now, like you said, now forget it. 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
Even when, even then it was 1,000. It sounds like not that much, but back in the day, that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
For people to shell out when they could go to public school for free.
Right.
So, it was hard to ask them to keep going to them and raising the tuition every year.
Yeah.
And eventually, the decision was just made that we just can't continue to go on like this, and it closed. And it was devastating because I had so many fond memories of so many great kids. I was a baseball coach too. I was the basketball coach and the baseball coach. So I had a lot of good memories with my baseball guys as well. Many times the basketball season went right into the baseball season because the basketball playoffs overlapped with with baseball. So what I end up with doing is I would practice with the basketball team in the afternoon, and then after basketball practice was over, I have to bring the baseball team in to throw and the pitchers to throw and stuff like that. Yeah, thank God I was a young guy at the time, and I didn't know what it was like to rest for 5 minutes. But obviously, you can't do that forever.
Right. So now that Tolentine was closed, so what led you to leave Tolentine and then go on to Pitt? Like, what led you? Like, was the college thing something that you always planned on doing, or was
Yes.
it just the best opportunity at that time?
I think both. So keep this in mind. We just won the city, state, national championship. I was the city coach of the year, the state coach of the year, and the national coach of the year.
3 for 3.
So, yeah. So what more than that can you do, right? Everything you do now is a duplication, right? It's, and then Malik was leaving, and we didn't leave the cupboard bare. We didn't leave the cupboard bare because Adrian Autry and Brian Reese were still there, for 2 more years. But I got an offer from about 4 or 5 different places. And remember at the time, Pitt had just won the Big East championship 2 years in a row. So they were the beast of the East, as they say at the time. And for me to get an offer to go right to an assistant coach on the road, you know what I mean? A top assistant right out of high school. I remember sitting down and talking to Ernie Lorch, and he said to me, John, opportunities like this, they don't come along every day. And if this is what your dream is, and if this is what you aspire to do, you got to strike while the iron is hot. I talked to a lot of people. I talked to Lou Carnesecca and people that I respect and people that I trusted, and they all seem to say the same thing, that if you're going to do it, the time is now. So getting back to a question that you had asked me earlier, ironically, when I went to Pitt, the New York City players that I recruited to Pitt were all Gauchos. How about that?
Wow.
Jerry McCullough, Orlando Antigua, Andre Ulrich, Eric Mobley, some really good players in there, but all 4 of those guys were Gauchos. So I really had to go there and make some inroads with Lou Dalmeda and Dave McCollin and Dave Jones. You know Dave Jones?
Yeah, I heard of him.
Yeah, Big Dave and I became really good friends. And he would come and work our camp every year. So Dave and I became really, really, we'd go to dinner and hang out. Just a good dude, And so I was able to go in there and recruit them. But I think what helped was, before I left to go to Tolentine, right across the street from me in one of the tenements Orlando Antigua lived. Okay? So I wanted Orlando to come to Tolentine, but I knew he was the Gaucho. So I had to go talk to the Gauchos and say, listen, Orlando lives right across the street. And, you know, I mean, where's he going to go? He should go to Tolentine. I know he's a Gaucho. And I know you guys, you know, have, you know, spent time with him and invested in him. And I promise you that whoever comes into if they come into my program a Gaucho, they're leaving a Gaucho. Because they thought that once a guy came to my program, like a Gaucho, that the next thing you know, they were going to be playing for Riverside.
Right, and they wasn't trying to lose him, basically.
No, absolutely not. So I had met with them on that, and I promised them, I said, you know, Orlando is not going to go to Riverside. He's going to stay Gaucho. He's going to be loyal. They were going to pay his tuition. Live right across the street, you know? So sure, Dave, I leave, and then Gary DeCesar gets him, and he goes to St. Raymond's. But I did end up getting him at Pitt, though. You know, my point is, I did break down some barriers and did build a relationship with the Gauchos before I left for Pittsburgh, and thankfully I did, because you know, you're gonna want to be involved with guys like Eric Mobley, who played years in the NBA, and Jerry Ice McCullough. Do you remember Jerry?
Yeah, I know Jerry.
Yeah. So I recruited Jerry. I loved him as a player. He had a really good career at Pitt, scored over 1,000 points. And Orlando, all of those guys, like I said, they were Gauchos. So if I didn't have a relationship with the Gauchos, there would be no chance of me getting any of those guys. And kids and good players, you know.
So
Jerry was a Rice kid, you know. Orlando was a St. Raymond's kid. Eric Mobley went to Salesian in New Rochelle. So these guys were all over the CHSAA, you know. And I was really happy to get those New York guys to come to Pitt.
So aside from those guys, you also coached Brian Shorter, Jerome Lane, Charles Smith, Darrell Porter, Sr. Like, talk about how was Pitt rocking back in those days?
Oh, yeah. You know, Sean Miller, Darrell Porter, a kid by the name of Jason Matthews from California. Don't forget Bobby Martin from Atlantic City, New Jersey, who was just a terrific player. And then, of course, you had, you had your NBA players with Lane and Smith, who just, you know, at another level. Demetrius Gore, another great player on that team. He was from Detroit. That year in the NCAA tournament, we lost to Vanderbilt. We hit and Kansas won the national championship that year, and we had beaten Kansas in a Christmas tournament. They had Danny Manning at the time. So we felt like, you know, we had a chance to win it all, but ended up losing at Barry Gohane threw in a shot. We should have fouled him. He threw in a three-pointer at the buzzer to tie it. We should have fouled him. That was when all that controversy back then. Do you foul him? Do you, take your chances? Well, we didn't, and he hit like a 35-footer, and we ended up losing in overtime. Wow. And, so we got eliminated in the second round. And that was a little bit of a downer. And the next year, of course, Charlie went pro, and then Jerome went pro after his junior year as well. So we lost those two guys. But then we had Shorter, and then we had a Bobby Martin, and a kid by the name of Rod Brooken, who was from Harrisburg, who was a terrific player. And, Rod was a big dude, man. He weighed close to 300 pounds. But if you looked at him and you didn't think he could play, man, he'd eat your lunch. I mean, he was good. And I remember other coaches would say, if they watch it, don't let his size fool you. This guy can play. And he could. It was really good. And like you said, we had Brian Shorter, and then we had Bobby Martin and Sean Miller, who ended up being a really good point guard for us. And then when we recruited a kid by the name of Chris McNeil, who ended up being a 1,000-point scorer. He was from Virginia. And Eric came in with Chris. And Orlando and Jerry the year after that. And I don't know if you remember Barry Rorson.
Slice. Good
You remember
man.
Slice, right? You know
I
Slice,
know
right?
Slice, yeah.
Yeah. So Barry was a very good friend of mine. And of course, he wound up at Pitt after I left. And he ended up, recruiting a lot of the New York City kids to come to Pittsburgh as well, So, that New York pipeline and those New York City kids have been really good to the University of Pittsburgh. It's been a good marriage. They've gone there. They've had a lot of success. And, and it's a nice place to go to school. It's a city place, not quite as, enormous as New York, but a city still, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Good for New York City kids to go to. And, it was good. It was a good marriage. And, I was really happy to spend the 4 years that I spent at Pitt. That was good stuff.
Now, what led you back to the high school route in 1992?
So 2 things. One not so good, and then one good. So in 92, ironically enough, in 1988, I was recruiting a kid by the name of Jamal Faulkner. Kid out of Christ the King High School, really good player.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of, I want to say, unscrupulous people around him that were recruiting him as well. Not only college guys, but like these hanger-ons, I guess you would call them, Dave.
So they like today we'd probably call them handlers.
Yeah, they would be. They would be. I got Wayne Simone, Arnie Hirsch. These guys, those names probably don't mean anything to you today,
Mm-hmm.
but they're hanging around with this 17-year-old kid and feeding them all kind of nonsense. And meanwhile, I know Jamal. I went to Christ the King myself, and I knew the coaches there, and so we end up signing Jamal, but the other schools that were recruiting him said that some of the people around him were acting as if they were an agent from the University of Pittsburgh, and we ended up getting involved in an NCAA investigation, which really infuriated me. And I'll tell you what else it did. It deflated me, and it disheartened me a little bit too, because here I am working hard on the road 6 months a year, running around like a lunatic. And, and a lot of the New York City kids trusted me. I'm a New York City guy too. I coached kids just like them my whole career. And, places like Syracuse and Seton Hall and even St. John's, they didn't like it, Dave. They didn't like it. They didn't like that I was going into the city and taking city kids out. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they were getting heat for it. So,
you were basically a threat to basically like Luke Honeysecker, Jim Boeheim.
Yeah. PJ Carlissimo, all those guys.
Wow.
All those guys. Believe me when I tell you, I was a threat to those guys. So that year, I applied for 2 college positions. I applied for Manhattan, and I applied for my alma mater, Iona. And,
and this is 1992?
This is 1992. And I didn't get either job. And Fran Fraschella got Manhattan, and a guy by the name of Jerry
Welsh?
Jerry Welsh, yeah. Jerry got the job, and then, of course, after he was done, his son Tim got it. If you remember, Tim Welsh, and then Tim went to Providence and some other places from there. So I guess, you know what, I had gotten, I was engaged to the University of Pittsburgh dentist, and we're going to get married and start a family. So, and you really were not able to do that in that lifestyle. So I said, you know what, let's put anchors down. She was from Newcastle. I'll go back to high school teaching and coaching. You open up your dental practice. And that's exactly what we did. And I never really looked back. But I have to tell you, I had some really, really good teams at Newcastle too. Went to 2 state championship games, Final Four in the state 5 times. Coach a kid by the name of David Young, who was drafted by the Golden State Warriors in the 2nd round. Ended up playing at Xavier as well. He played for Skip Prosser, and then Skip Prosser left, and then he played for Thad Matta before he went to Ohio State. So he was a great player for me. So he had some really good players here. Of course, not on the level of New York City, but took my 1999 team to as high as number 7 in the USA Today, and came back and played Rice that year at Rutgers, and lost to Kenny Satterfield and that crew, that great Rice team. They beat us by 6. Rice had 3 Division I players on their team that were really good. That was after Felipe, but you remember Kenny Satterfield, right?
Yeah, I know Kenny Satterfield.
Cincinnati, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
His daughter plays for Xavier now.
Yes. So he was really good. He was really good. But we went toe to toe. They ended up beating us. But that year we beat LaSalle. That year we beat St. Raymond's when they had a majestic map. So I had the New York City teams come here to play us because I knew we could compete with them. And we ended up beating LaSalle, Iona Prep, and St. Raymond's, but we lost to Rice.
So 3 out of 4. That's interesting.
Not too shabby. Not too shabby. And we got the Blues in that year in the state championship game to Harrisburg, who had a really good team.
So do you feel that do you feel like you made the best decision in leaving college basketball behind?
Well, I try not to live my life looking in the rearview mirror. Okay. God only knows what I was saved from by not going that route. You know what I mean? He opened the doors and put this path before me, and I have no regrets. I will tell you that I enjoyed every minute of coaching high school basketball in New York City, and I enjoyed every second of being a coach at Pitt. They treated me like a king at the University of Pittsburgh, and they were really disappointed when I left, but it was the right thing to do. And then you know what I did? I coached for another 15 years in high school, Dave, and then I went into administration. So how about this? I was principal of Newcastle High School, and they still allowed me to be the basketball coach too.
So, you got a lot of power over there.
Yeah, I did. And then later on, I became the superintendent. Now, I retired now. I retired a year and a half ago, so I'm retired now. And if you follow me on Facebook, you probably have seen that we're opening up a Rita's Italian Ice and Custard. Have you ever heard of that?
I've had that in Coney Island.
Absolutely. So we're opening one of those up here where I live now in Pennsylvania. And then after I am, I'm done, my family will be able to run that, and will be something business that I have left them. They can run and build and maybe own multiple. And I've been asked 100 times to go back to coaching. Do you want to go back? Do you want to do it? And, after 30 years, I did it for 30 years. I think I've had my fill. And I don't have any regrets.
Well said. So my final question for you, Coach, is what's next in the future for John Sarandrea?
Well, for me right now is I'm teaching my children, right? They're 19. I have two 22-year-olds and a 23-year-old. I'm teaching them how to be entrepreneurs and how to run their own business. All my life, I worked for somebody else. I would like them to work hard and be their own boss and work hard for themselves and their family. I think that's the wave of the future. I think that that's the best way to learn when you got your own skin in the game. You know what I mean? If I don't go to work and I don't do the job, we don't eat. One of those
Hard work.
types of things. So, whereas when you work for a corporation, you get sick days, you get vacation days, you get all those things where, you might be off, but you're still getting paid. But when you run your own business, you're it, man. It's you. Or or it's my daughter, or it's my sons, and they need to learn that there's no shortcuts, that hard work is the only way to go, to work and get an honest day living. And if you live your life that way, God will bless you. And then the ultimate blessing is when you're able to become so successful that you can become a blessing to others as well. And that's it.
Well said, Coach. Thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your testimonial with you. And I wish you nothing but the best with readers. And I hope to actually come out there someday and actually partake
Dave,
in
you're
some
welcome
readers.
anytime. You're welcome anytime. We'll go to 100 basketball games if you come.
Indeed.
Go to Pitt. No, but you're welcome anytime. That's great. And please stay in touch with me on Facebook.
I will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good speaking with you.
Indeed. Well, this is episode 17, guys. You can check it out on YouTube, IGTV, and Facebook. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Peace. Good night.